right, good morning and Happy New Year, Coach. How are you?
Good. Dude, I am solid. It's January 3rd, 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 647.
You nail it every time, buddy.
Yeah, well, not every time, but, most of the time. 80% of the time is most of the time, so we'll count it. Yeah, it's weird saying 2023. I'm sure I'll mess that up a few more times, or at least at some point. But yeah, it's a new year. Same us. It's same thing. We'll hopefully deliver the same standard that we have the last 5 or 6 years, if not just a little bit better, because that is the goal, just a little bit better every day. Hope you all had an amazing Christmas and holiday season. You celebrated the new year with some fun and celebrated responsibly and enjoyed yourself thoroughly. But yeah, it's a new year, a lot of optimism in the air. First time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Sometimes very valuable. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to the world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We often utilize our Facebook group as well. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question and let's right in. Amazing community, fantastic people, pretty great resource. With, again, a wide range of athletes, from beginners all the way up to professionals and people that have they've done it all. They've made the mistakes. They've had a lot of successes and are more than willing to share their experience and their wisdom to hopefully help you avoid some of those same obstacles and maybe get to your success a little bit quicker. And oftentimes a very confusing and overwhelming sport with 3 different disciplines and nutrition and gear and everything else. I think it's pretty awesome to have a supportive community that is there to help and assist you along the way and kind of help clear some of the clutter and the noise out of the air that we oftentimes see. And we'll go in there about once a month and do a Q&A, answer the questions of the people, because we are the People's Podcast. And but that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, you asked me before the podcast if I had a topic, and I think you might have just said it early in your intro there, where you're talking about how this year we're back with the same standards and everything like that. But you said, yeah, but hopefully we can get a little bit better. And I think that to me really resonates right now, because I was in a decent groove. We did the run camp, and then I think a lot of people, it's tendency to fall off a little bit in December, which is okay. And then you come back, and I know you've been telling your athletes this week too, but like, all right, proceed with caution, for some of them, because they were so, at one place maybe a month ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever. And then all of a sudden the calendar turns and it feels like you just want to get right back to that spot. And I've actually been just kind of taking this every day as it comes, and really what you just said, just trying to be a little bit better today. And it's really kind of it's an interesting framework to come from. And I think so fast we can get trapped into these ideas of getting, somewhere quickly. But the idea of sort of managing that progress and being okay with it and being able to look into the future and see, like, okay, this process, if it just keeps building, and then you can kind of get to the point where you understand that it's working and that you're going to be able to do what you're going to do, rather than think about what you want to do and be afraid of it. And then it's really kind of that stay in the moment thing. But it's, like, for example, I've just been trying to get up in the morning, or I got my trainer set up, and I've kind of just got on it the last few days. I haven't gone crazy, but I've just, for 3 days in a row, just got on there and spun. And today, was the first day I was like, okay, I'm going to throw a little bit of 1 minute efforts in here a little bit, you know, and then because it's been a long time since I've really been in bike shape, and I feel decent, but to just put yourself, you know, throw the hammer down and go after it too quickly, I think those are the loops and the cycles that we create with ourselves that make life more difficult. But it's like being okay with just getting a little bit better today instead of always shooting for the moon.
Yeah, no, listen, it's funny because, you know, I think everybody's focus is, you know, the beginning of the year and what's your goals and what are you going to do this year? You know, I can even feel it. Like, it's funny because you got two different kinds of people. I'm back in the office today. It's a big co-work space. You know, there's been in the last 3 weeks, or at least a month, there's probably been 15 new people that have come in and gotten offices. And it was interesting. I was the first person this morning I had to come in the back door. Very fortunate to be one of those people who's excited to get back to work after the holidays. But it's funny because you can see like two different kinds of people that are walking in. You see people that are excited to get back to work, and then you see people that are just kind of like, fuck, I'm back. Yeah, well, you know, it was fun while it lasted. I don't have to do anything. Here we go. And, you know, and a lot of people are making resolutions and goals for this year. And, you know, who do I need to be and what do I need to do? And I think one of the biggest things, you know, and you talk to, you know, we talk about this a lot about just, you know, making small changes, you know, insignificant, that might seem insignificant or not big enough, but they oftentimes add up to, you know, great goals, great performances, and huge changes. Because most of the time we way overshoot what's realistic. And I think when it comes to life and when it comes to training and racing, I think one of the biggest lessons we have hopefully all taken from the last 2 to 3, you know, years of uncertainty and changes, and you had the COVID, and you had pandemic, then you got stuff with the economy, and you got all the things that are moving around, and it's like, I think it's almost foolish to pigeonhole yourself into one specific direction, right? You have to approach the year in more of a broad way, I think, to be successful. It doesn't mean you don't focus, doesn't mean you're not dialed in. It just means, you know, because again, like it's what, January 3rd? Mm-hmm. Think about the last few years, right? You've made New Year's resolutions, you signed up for races, and then think about how different your life is just 6 months later. Hell, look at us, right? This time last year in Chattanooga, we got the training center, we're doing this, we're doing that. You know, and then 5 months, you know, all these plans, what are we going to do? We're going to put camps here. This is how our year is going to be. And then 6 months later, I'm living in Kansas, you're living in Wisconsin, and we had sold, you know, our commercial stuff in Chattanooga, and here we are. Mm-hmm. Like we have never envisioned that, right? And so I think what happens for a lot of people, and again, this goes with, you know, how you're preparing, you know, your business. It's you can't just, the thing is about planning for the New Year's, you don't know what to expect. Right. No one knows. And I think, again, as if the last 2 to 3 years haven't shown us. And if you haven't been shown that, then you're just stubborn and you're not willing to kind of be creative and open your eyes and problem solve. But you have to be well-rounded. You have to be prepared, right? You have to be flexible. And I think those are skills, right, to focus on, especially for athletes. When you sign up for a race in June, you sign up for a race in September, you've got this perfect year planned out. And then a month later, you change jobs. You got to move. Your spouse is pregnant. Or you're having a baby. You know, and you're like, there goes my year. Wait a minute. That doesn't. Your year isn't gone. Because what happens so many times is that we attach ourselves to this one thing, and if it doesn't, it's like the grandiose version of the you know, I'll start over on Monday, right? It's like, oh, it's gone to the drain. I'll start on Monday. People just say, I'll get back at it next year. Really? You're willing to waste a whole year of your life waiting to get back at it, waiting to do this, waiting to do that, waiting, right? When you don't know what's even going to be around the corner, or if there is going to be a corner, right, to come around to do the next big thing you want to do, because now that you had to take 2 weeks off, right, or you strained your hamstring in February and you're not where you wanted to be for your race in May. The athletes, one of athletes' biggest, you know, people always talk about ability, right, in training. What's the athletic ability? Two of the biggest things you can have is, in my opinion, is availability and flexibility. And I'm talking about flexibility like touching your toes, They made us waste like 10 minutes trying to do that in the start of PE class in gym when we were growing up. I'm talking about, like we talk about, being flexible in the fuck around, like just being flexible with life, that things don't have to be perfect, right? That if something doesn't go your way, you adapt, right? Because at your core, if you're keeping things in focus and in perspective, and your objective is the same, right? To get better at it every day, to try your best, to keep moving, to be happy, and to do, a couple of the things that are on your own specific list, then those stay the same, right? It might not be an hour run, but it might be 30. Right, you might miss on Friday, but you might get back to work on a Saturday. And so I think this year, instead of being so rigid and steadfast, which again isn't a bad thing, is to be steadfast and being flexible, because that's how you succeed. Right? Is you either the term adapt or die. Change is hard, especially for athletes. They hate change. And we say a lot, varieties for the week, and I do believe that. But at some point, you have to be flexible, or at least you have to be prepared to be flexible, right? Those opportunities, those obstacles, or injuries, or change, or stress, it might not happen. And if it doesn't, good for you. But if it does, be ready. Don't expect perfection, right? Expect flexibility and the ability to progress through whatever else is coming at you in life, and still see that the process is moving forward. That's it, because then you'll end up having the best possible year you could have. Don't make all these assumptions and time goals in January when your life is one thing, when we all know in 3 months it's going to be different. Totally. I mean, just looking through like my athlete roster, catching up on things from the, our little hiatus in December. Like you look at athletes and like where people are in the last year, and how things have changed, and what they're doing, and how different their life is, myself included. And you're like, God, like things are so different. And then you see people putting on their goal sheet. It's typically over. Athletes that overcommit and commit way too many races. Like, you know what? This first quarter to 2 quarters of the year up through June, I really just need to focus on life and my family. And I don't even know that I want to race. I had an athlete tell me last week, leave me a voicemail. I have these goals this year. I want to exercise. I want to keep training, but I'm not really honestly sure I'm in a place to race this year, but I still want to keep training. What? That's like anti-triathlon talk, right? That's like everyone has to have something, because if you don't, then how are you going to have a discussion at the local Tri-Club dinner? What's your race this year? I know that's what's your B race, what's your A race? You're doing the same thing. It's like perspective and maturing, as I always comment afterwards. I'm like, man, that's such an incredible, like you've really grown the last year or two when you're not overcommitting. You're being you're showing a lot of perspective and responsibility, right, for yourself and your own life, not to add stress when you see stress happening down the road, like when you can forecast and what's happened, or it happened last year, so you don't want to mirror and repeat it. There's growth there. And so I think, and again, I'm gonna shut up in a second, is when you look at this year and you look at planning, as triathletes love to plan. It's like you can plan the best of your ability, but within that plan, be as flexible as possible, and that's an okay trait to have, and it's actually very encouraged.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast while I was on the bike this morning, and the guy was talking about I can't remember, he was one of these business guys, but I liked his approach, and he was talking about how one of the things that helped him be successful was he honed his apathy. Now think about that. It's like. And the point he said, well, I just tried to get away from these highs and lows. And, I think he used an example of, you can't, with a gloomy day, if you don't have gloomy days, you don't have a sunshine day. You can't, you can't react. So it's basically about controlling your emotions, or not overreacting to emotions. Like if you're sad, sad is just the sad, and happy is just happy, right? And you have to have both. But like overreacting to those. And I think a lot of times, in a strange way, putting races down, or using the race, I guess, as a high is sort of a quick path to almost creating problems if you're using it as the fuel, and like this morning, as I actually signed up for Ironman Wisconsin this weekend, by the way. And,
Did you know?
Yeah.
Good for you.
They got the discount before the new year. But I knew I was going to do it. So I was like, all right, let's just put it out there. But, my first reaction is like, I'm just going to go crush everybody. It's like, and I'm thinking to myself, how are you going to do that, bro? You've been saying that for like 9-10 years now. And then I've sort of reworked my thought process and reframed things into this idea of like, I've got Ironman sitting out there, and now I can just sit. I've got a chance to make the stew. How am I going to pull this thing together and and enjoy the ingredients of it and the process? And you think about process, and it's like there's something really interesting about climbing a big hill and being in the middle of that big hill and not wanting it to end. Like, if you can get your mind wrapped around that, and that's the process to me, is sort of like, I don't know, something has kind of flipped a little bit. I feel like I'm really excited to kind of like start this process now and just see how it builds a little bit by a little bit. And then, knowing at some point, like, you got the race, it's just a matter of how you're going to perform, and in the past, a lot of times I've been that, the guy in the student union drinking coffee all night before my final exam and just like hoping for the best out there. But there's a certain point, and I know you see it with a lot of athletes. So you get to the point, you're a month or two out from the race and you're like, all right, you're in a really good spot. There's no reason to worry about being able to have a decent race. But now it's like you can fine tune, get your mind in the right place, and, go out there without a ton of anxiety and perform well, rather than kind of waking up and kind of throwing, crap shooting the whole thing and hoping things work out. But it's about, then it becomes that race is just sort of a, evaluation of how you've been living or training. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's the perspective of, and you've been with your mom too long if you're talking about stew.
Yeah.
It's at least it's not like, that pan of Chex Mix you showed me the other day, a couple weeks ago. I think one of the problems with defining ourselves is that we put ourselves in a hole, right? And we limit opportunities. I'm going to crush this race. So what if you don't? And then not just what if you don't, but in order to get to the point to have the perfect year, to put yourself in the perfect spot, to have the perfect race, then what if something happens and you don't? Was the year a waste? No. Right? Was the year a catastrophe? And you're like, no. But if you looked at it that way, then you might honestly think that, right? This year was a failure. I had my A race. You're like, what? Yeah. All that time, right? So again, labeling yourself, putting yourself in a with a concrete, defining, title or goal for the year, and everything else is a failure. Like, that might work for like the 1% of the population, right? And even then, I don't think it's healthy. It's to do that because, identity, again, we live in a world where I think it's interesting that people will always look for teams or communities or, affiliations where they feel comfortable, and everyone likes to be a part of something, even if you're not, going to get any much from it. People label themselves, their political view or their dietary choice or their endurance distance or their, religion, or that's they define themselves. I think one of the best skills we can all have is both as athletes, and this one of the reasons people, we get a lot of emails about, triathletes, and I'm like, we coach athletes, right? It just so happens that, quite a few of our athletes do triathlon. Right. And our our podcast is called, Crushing Iron. It's not called Crushing Triathlon. I mean, this podcast alone isn't just solely dedicated to triathlon. It's dedicated to life. And, we coach a lot of people who are just interested in running. We coach a lot of people that are just interested in cycling. We coach a lot of people who are just interested in swimming. We got people that are they're training for their very first 5K. Right. And you got people who are trying to do long distance swim events, or, we had, a guy last year do Leadville mountain bike, 100. We got people doing gravel bike stage races out on the West Coast. 15 milers, 100 milers, sprints, Olympics, like, we coach them all, right? Because we love working with people, but we also believe that that everyone is an athlete. Now, whether you choose to believe that is your choice, but everyone has that inside of them. Like, I've never met anybody, and I think I said this a few weeks ago, I've never met anybody being like, you can't accomplish anything. Because that's a choice, right? From the chin up, right? And if you measure success, or you define your success by doing only this one thing, then you're not really, leaving yourself a lot of room, right? To be successful, to be happy, like as I'm looking at my own year for this year, and what do I want to do? And I've got, I've got all these things racing through my mind. Like, I want to do this, I want to do that. We just, spend, a significant amount of time for a year kind of revamping, our training process and our programming, and they're loving it, but it takes a lot of time to do that. And there's all these other things that I want to do. And it's like, but I want to do this. And then one of these things this morning I thought about was, defining how I want to feel when the end of the year is over, right? Not what I want to accomplish, but defining, because I'm not big on resolutions, because they always seem very like, I want to lose 20 pounds by February 5th, or I want to, do this, or I want to save 3% of my income. It's like, I want to define, how do I want to feel when the year is over, right? I want to feel good about what I accomplished. I want to be healthier at the end of the year than when I started. I want to feel better than I did when I wake up. Simple things like that. I want to feel like I did a better job, as a father, and all these things that, are, again, they're not specific, but they could be a million different things, because you can be successful like that in a couple different ways each day, right? Feeling better could, one day could mean walking, one day could mean running, one day could mean riding, one day could mean taking the dog for a walk, one day it could mean going, taking Hayden, do something outside, and same thing with fueling. It could look different each day, but these broad terms are great because it opens up opportunity to be successful, right? I just want to get fitter this year. All right, that's a great goal. Everyone has that goal. I think that's in this sport. I want to get fitter. I want to get, fitter / faster, right? But then they always I wanted to go sub 10 at this race, and that's great. You should do that, but let's make sure we're also focusing on, the big picture, which is to be healthier and to be happier. And then if you do that, you're going to train more, and then you're going to, then you're going to get fit, then you are going to become, faster. And then one of the most important things that we always focus on is just how important it is for athletes to be happy. Right. And to not just simply focus on, I just had this one race. And if you're only focused on that as a coach, and you're missing a really great opportunity to connect and impact, right, someone's life, in a positive way, and to hopefully, and it's not listen, we have standards as high as anybody, in terms of athlete performances and them accomplishing everything they want to accomplish. But at the same time, you also have to be so focused and so dialed in on the person, right? Because if they, as a coach, unless you're just trying to, churn them and burn them with your athletes, then you want these people to be successful in life, right? To be healthy, to be around, to be able, more fit to play with their kids, or to maybe not train on a day so they can go to their kid's game, or they can't miss this, or they're not taking a bike on vacation, right? They're taking time away. It's true happiness, right, in life, and being able to, and the fitter you are, generally speaking, the happier you are, because you feel healthier, you're sleeping better, inflammation's lower, you're usually eating better, which also means you're probably feeling better. Like, all these things are connected. And if you do that, then you're more than likely also going to reach your goals. But it doesn't mean a pass or fail year, right? There's a lot about, anytime you go back and look at the course of your year, you should be like, there are a lot of things I did really, really well, and then a lot of things and then these few things I kind of sucked at, but to me, it's kind of like, when the day you die and you have your funeral. Listen, we've all made just massive fucking mistakes in our lives. I know I have. But the point is to hopefully do more good than harm on this planet. If you've done more good, then that's what your funeral's gonna be about. It's gonna be about talking about the good things you did. But we should do that every year, right? Not just when you die and you're not around to hear it. These are all things I did good this year. This made this year successful. Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, it was challenging. Yeah, I didn't do this, but yeah, I did this. And I didn't plan on doing it, but I did it, and it was a good year. So how can I better my approach to the year? Or maybe not maybe in a different way, not necessarily approach my way to a year, but approach my way to life, is to get better every day. Not a significant change, right? Just to get better, just to do something for myself every day, right? To put myself as a priority. And again, that could look different. It could look like meditation, a cold shower. It could look fasting. It could look like taking your dog for a walk, or a gravel ride, or playing a couple sets of tennis, or it could look like whatever, right? But when you identify things, and this was an underlying theme with a lot of athletes when I was reading through some of the 2023 kind of goal and race planning forms, was to distance themselves from the identity that we create around triathlon, right? And that is it's our only outlet, and that's the only thing we have that we can identify as, right? You identify as a triathlete more than you do anything else, which is honestly a shame, right? It was brought up last night. I was watching the Bills-Bengals, game, and the unfortunate incident there with the guy going into cardiac arrest in the field. Like, football stopped. Mm-hmm. Like, in dead track, it stopped. And it was really, and it was like, and they talked about, you got to remember it's a human being. And like, we should always remember that, right? That we work with people, human beings first and foremost. We work with people first, right? You go out to restaurants, you go to here and you're bitching and moaning about this person and how horrific they are and this and this. And we always forget, right, that people have families, they've got kids, they've got spouses, they were wanting to go home tonight. We're all people, we're all humans, right? And that's just something that's very, very important, I think, for everyone to understand and to realize, is that you just need to be the best person you can be this year. And that could be in any shape or form, right? That does anything, and it's just really interesting. I think even as long as, you and I have both been in this sport and doing this podcast, and as long as we've been coaching, we still get questions from athletes that you're like, yeah, I don't want to do triathlon this year. Is that okay? And you're like, fuck if I care. I mean, you can pick up pickleball if you want to. We can train for that. Like, whatever makes you happy, right? Because I do think change is necessary to be happy, right? And to stay dialed in, because it keeps you free, right? There's so much of life that we feel forced to do, right? I've got to do this. Again, like I know I talk about this a lot with Hayden, but when he complains about stuff, and he's like, God, it's like, you never let me do this. He's like, I never get. I'm like, you want to switch? Do you want to switch? Because I'll go to school and chill and color and hang out with my buds. And have recess. You can go to work. You can make my meals. You can make the money. You can pay the bills, right? You can clean up. You can go walk waffles. He's like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, that's what I thought. Like, it's like, there's so many things in life we have to do every day. The stuff that we feel like that should rejuvenate, it should be our choice, right? And so I think you've got to. That's why I also think not having an idea what you want to do this year is great, but have an idea of who you want to be. Who do I want to be this year? And that'll honestly lead you down to what are you gonna do, or what makes sense for you to do that falls in line with who you want to be this year. Because if they don't line up, what you want to do and who you want to be, if they don't line up, then something's gotta give. Because if they don't, they will butt heads until one of them explodes, and then you're left with resentment or disappointment or frustration, or you just give up and say, yeah, 2024, this is gonna be my year, man. And you're saying that in fucking March, right? It's like, we don't have time for that. So focus on who you want to be and what that means to you, and then figure out what fits. Don't do it the other way. We got a ton of podcasts out there about, plan out your life first and then see what races fit or don't fit. Don't plan your races and then try to fit life into it. I mean, that's something we drive home with our athletes all the time is in order to be happy, it has to be sustainable and remove stress. Don't add stress out of the gate by planning, an irresponsible race on a terrible date that you already know your family is going to be like, why did you do that? And you're like, I'm locked in. I got to do it now. No, you don't. You got to be happy. And that should be your focus.
Yeah, we talk about recovery a lot in this podcast, and that one day at a time, and what are you doing today to make yourself a little bit better. And as I was listening to Goggins' book, he talks about the 1 second decision. He's like 1 second at a time, but not in a obsessive way. He's like, a lot of times you're facing these ideas, you want to change yourself in life, and it can come down to taking a breath and making 1 second decision. It's like, are you going to be strong enough to not go back down that same path or whatever, or are you going to keep going the right way? And it really is like about these little decisions we make throughout the day, and putting yourself out there, naked is hard. Like really putting yourself out there, and I think about this in terms of like, last year when I decided to do Wisconsin, and I think I do this, like I've done this a lot where, I think I'm afraid sometimes to really know the answer. Like if I really commit to this and I put myself through all the stuff I need to do and learn the right way and pursue things the right way and take it, slow and do it. What if I don't do what I think I can do? That is always like and I think I did that with a lot of, I've done it both ways. Like in schools, I always think a good analogy with tests where I've taken the class, I've done my homework, I've kept up, I've done well on quizzes, and then the final became easy. But I've also done the overnight thing in the union with the coffee, and then just like kind of got through it. And I was like, oh, I got that test. I got a B or something, and saved the semester. But I never felt good about the class. You know what I mean? I never felt like I really learned it. And then last year when I decided to do Wisconsin, I kept putting it off. And I was like, you know what? I decided 2.5 months before the race, I'm going to do it, And what that did, I felt like was it built in an excuse for me. I was like, well, I only trained for 2.5 months, like, and that's kind of weird, but like, I think a lot of people do that in different ways because, you put yourself out there and then, you're kind of almost afraid to learn the truth. Am I not as good as I thought? It's easy to sit here and talk, I'm going to crush that race and then go out there and say, I had a, bad nutrition or whatever the hell it is. There's always something in there. But I just think it's really difficult to do that. And, I was, of course, I'm a Badger fan. I found this really interesting. I was listening to our basketball coach. It was his post-game show, and they were talking about, and it reminded me of my college experience. And I was like, wow. He said about, 10 years ago or something, they made an effort to bring in like a tutor system, like a tutor classroom into the basketball arena, where it's also for hockey and other sports, but they have like a student learning center or something in the building. And, of course, with athletes and travel and stuff like that, it's probably difficult as hell to keep up on classwork. So, but when they did that, they found that the players, like after finals or leading into finals, they were a lot more relaxed, and their ability to perform as well, because they had taken care of their business, and it made me think back to when I used to play college baseball. And there were so many times when we're going to the playoffs and shit, and I was worried about flunking a class. And, I was just, my whole mindset was, I had to almost shut it off and become a different person in order to perform. But the lesson, I guess, is that when you have everything going, you're taking care of business in other aspects of your life, training is probably a hell of a lot easier too. It's like that guilt of going out to train when you haven't done something you need to be doing in life, and that kind of stuff snowballs. So I think that for me, that 1 second decision thing comes down to that a lot, is like, before I go do this, I need to take care of, this, whatever it is, like Training Peaks or something like that. And that just, I think frees up your brain. It frees up your body to move forward in an unencumbered way. And it makes ultimately a better performance.
Better performance by kind of starting at the opposite end, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the opposite Tri-Calc, that we always joke about. I'm not sure if that app still exists, but I'm sure it does.
Oh, it does.
It's like, what's it going to take for me to do this time that I'm just pulling out of thin air, right? A year in advance, how can I do a 10 and a half? Well, I'm going to do a 57-minute swim, 6 minute transition, this and this. And you're like, first of all, you pull that number out of nowhere, out of a hat, right? And then you're like, this is what I got to do every day. Instead of, and then work your way, again, what you want to do in the end, and that drives what you want to do in the present. And while that might sound attainable for stuff like that, it's really not, because you have no idea how your body's going to react. Just like we have no idea how a training block's going to go, or a 3-month block will go, or your life will go in like 2 weeks. It's like things change on a dime, right? We love to act like we have this infinite amount of control in our life. But the truth is that so much of our life is dictated by specific things that we have to do every single day, right? Provide for your family. You got to work. Your kid has to go to school. All these kind of things that affect you in a major way. And those affect what you do with your free time, right? And that's where we choose to create other happiness, and we do things that we're passionate about. And then when life throws a curveball in our time or our availability to pursue that passion, whether it's building cars or training for triathlon, whatever it is, and that time is reduced, then we feel like our life has been infringed on. Well, I can't do this now. It's like, no, I can't build cars. I can't. I really wanted to rebuild this 1970 whatever Mustang, and I wanted it done by September, and now it's just done. Well, instead of being that, well, maybe it might be done September, because you got to work hours, your commute's longer, your kids went from public school to private school and it's 20 minutes away. It might just take you 3 months longer. That's okay. That's perfectly fine, right? So it's not doom and gloom. You can be disappointed for a second, but the end goal can be the same. You just can't put so much specificity into the exactness of it, because then you're just asking for failure, because then things have to go perfectly. They have to go perfectly. And if they don't, and again, talking about, athletes and people who struggle with change, is when things don't go perfectly, it's a disaster. I mean, and triathletes are like the famous this, like, my Zwift wouldn't load today, coach, so I can't do my workout. Yeah, this software program that won't load, that's freezing, is actually preventing my 2 feet from leaving the ground and actually clipping into my pedals. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I left my watch at home. I got to the pool. I went to put my bathing suit on and realized I forgot my Garmin. I can't put my bathing suit on without my Garmin. I can't. Have you ever tried? It's impossible to walk in the pool deck, get in and swim a maybe non-defined amount of time, or distance without a watch on. Yeah. It is impossible.
It is.
Coach, I packed my bag. I went to my favorite greenway. I got out. Forgot my earbuds. Have you tried running without listening to music? I can't do it. I literally can't do it. So I didn't run. I'll just move it. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, these are the inflexibilities that triathletes are known for, and people are known for, how inflexible you have to be. It's actually one of my goals this year is to be more flexible and have more fun. Because the less flexible you are, I truly believe, the less fun you have. Because you think in order for it to be fun, it has to go perfectly, right? And predicting how things go. Like, I shared this experience with you maybe it was like last week, that, my son Hayden has been huge into hockey. I mean, big time. He loves it. He loves watching it. So we were in Nashville visiting my family, and I was like, all right, and it just so happens the Predators had a couple home games, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get some tickets. And I'm gonna take the family, and I got a reservation at the arena, so we ate there, and he's just wide-eyed. Like, it was kind of, his eyes were the way I always envisioned my eyes would be if I ever saw Kobe Bryant in person. Mm-hmm. He's like one of my like sports legend icon, And he was just like wide-eyed. I want to do. He didn't know we were going to the game, and we were just going rushing. It's like, man, I really want to go. And finally, we're like, all right, we're going. And then the people there like brought him like a puck and a flag, all these things you do for like, first time. Anyway, we go down, we sit down, and the game doesn't start till 7. Okay, which I'm already kind of like, all right, this isn't going to go well. Like, this is terrible timing. I mean, I alone can't make it past 8:30, right?
Right.
And it is usually in bed by 7:30, but we're getting to the game and it's not going to start till 7. I was like, there's no way. There's no way he's going to make it. And I'm driving downtown Nashville, which I despise. Everything about downtown Nashville now is traffic and people and honking and bachelorette parties. And I was like, this feels so weird. It's like taking your 6-year-old to Vegas in the downtown strip. And that's what it feels like. So I'm parking there. I'm like overcoming all these things I just really don't want to do. And all I could honestly think about having taken him to the football game before was like, we're going to make it to the first period. That's it. We're going to make it through the first period. So I had honestly like pumped myself up to leave after the first period because I was like, there's no way he's going to survive this. No way. He leans over about midway through the first, and his face looked so tired. And I was honestly like, I wanted to stay, but I was honestly getting pumped up to like kind of like leave because I was getting tired. That's how old I am. And he looked at me with his face like total tiredness. And he was like, Dad, are we going to stay for the whole game? And I'm thinking, here it comes. We're about to pack up. And I go, well, buddy, I mean, we can definitely stay for the whole thing. But if you're really, really tired, then we can go. And he goes, barely gets his words out of his mouth. I want to stay for the whole game. And my first thought was, fuck, I got to find a way to stay. I got to go find some hot chocolate or something. I got to stay awake. And then 5 minutes later, he's standing up chanting, you suck, to the other team, which you can only say like inside Birdstone. But it was like this example of like how I just had to let go of the experience because they were all things I really don't like. Like, I don't like going downtown. I don't like being stuck in like, paying for parking and walking with huge crowds and walking into a space. It's like, it's just really not my thing. And going into arena and not knowing how long you're going to stay. It's like that, I think it's like an Allstate commercial where it's like a bunch of people in the parking lot and they're like, man, I wonder how much parking lot, these parking lots make. And this guy goes, right. So the plan is to leave the game in the second half. And this guy goes, we're not planning to leave before we walk in the stadium. And I was like, that's me. That's like, I'm that guy. But it was those experiences, because it meant the world. He had the best time. But I guess the moral of the story is that's how I really want to be this year when it comes to experiencing more things, is to be more flexible and to have more fun and not be so rigid and not be so, focused on things going perfectly and being so exact. And because if they don't, then they're not a success. Right. And we do that so much in training where we miss a Tuesday, we miss a Wednesday, and we're like, oh, the week's done. No, it's not. You still got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to crush this week. Right. Two days is nothing. And so I think flexibility and fun, right, are two things that I think are really great things to focus on this year. Again, not just in life, but in training, right? And being flexible and waiting to sign up for races if you're not sure. Another great skill, like we've talked about on a few recent podcasts with things not selling out. Don't sign up. Wait to see what your life is like and what makes sense, and then sign up. Be patient, be flexible, and have some fun.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this whole fun thing is so important. I think I don't know if I put it on the podcast or I was telling somebody, but I'm committed. I'm committed to being serious about having fun this year. And for me, a lot of times with training, I think back to, like my first Ironman when I was working with you and we had the group and everything like that. It wasn't about numbers. I was just trying to, stay in, keep up basically. And I still think that's probably the hardest I've worked for a whole year in my training calendars. And it was just like we were just doing shit, we were doing hard things, and we rode the trace a lot, and I never had a power meter. I wasn't dealing with all that. I was just riding hard when I had the energy and went after it. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Like I think to me, step one, like I was talking about the, clearing your head from other shit, is just actually doing the work. And doing work for me means just being consistent and getting on the bike a lot and riding a lot and doing that kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm kind of at the place where I'm just ready to let sort of things take care of themselves. You know, I just have to, you know, I'll go after intervals hard and everything, but I won't obsess about, you know, just finite little numbers and things of that nature, because I know there's so much more for me to gain is just by getting in there and mixing it up and actually enjoying it. Because that's another part, right? Is like, if you have a workout, you know, like I ride a lot on the trainer without anything, and I just kind of like go based on feel and my effort. And I really, you know, if I'm sweating a lot, am I breathing hard? Am I going after it? And to me, that's the ticket, you know. And if it wasn't for whatever, you know, reason, like now I'm trying to get up and ride in the morning, and a lot of times I just don't feel, you know. I think you've talked about that. You run better or ride better? Ride better in the afternoon, right? At least stronger.
I ride significantly better at between like 1 and 4 o'clock.
Right. So, but for me, talk about clearing the plate is if I can get up and ride in the morning, whether or not it's my blast, you know, ball blast and ride, that clears the table for other things. And it works in reverse almost for me, because I have a tendency to let workouts linger throughout the day until I feel like doing them. And it's an interesting experiment to kind of just get up and go through it and know that you're maybe not at your peak, but just getting the work in and getting that out of the way, because then it just frees up the other thing, which kind of snowballs into clearing the deck for your next workout and vice versa and all the way around, and then that sort of thing done. But to me, it's just, I don't know. I don't want to say it's like super fun, but it's fun knowing that it's, I did it, you know. It's like, and this morning was interesting, man. It's like, you're just laying in bed, and I know there's a lot of morning people out there, but I'm certainly not one of them. And I'm like sitting there going, man, how many excuses I was just sitting there listening. You know, it's kind of like meditation. You just sort of like listen to the excuses flowing through your head, or alternatives. Maybe I'll just go for a walk today. Maybe I'll do some writing. You know, maybe I just need to sit down and have a little breakfast, or, you know, maybe I can do that. I should do this, or I'll do it. You know, like, and finally I was just like, fuck that, man. Just get on the bike, man. You know, it's like, what is that? And then there was a time when in the morning when I knew I went from like 50-50 to about 95% sure that I was going to make the bike, but I was still kind of throwing it. Well, I just sit down and write for a few minutes. And I did, actually. And then I was like, but I knew it was creeping up. I was like 99% sure I'm getting on that thing. And then it was just a matter of finding my bike shorts and getting on. And that's another thing. I should have just had them sitting right there. You know, just get on and do it and get done. Move on. That's fun.
It's always funny. It's like the list of excuses we come up with. And then like the first thing you're just like, why am I even making excuses right now? It's like, what's the real reason? Because the excuses are just like what we're telling ourselves. It's not the reason why we're creating a story in the first place. You know, or this won't be my year. I don't think I can do this. I'm like, that's why I always feel like, you know, fascinating how we, you know, people put resolutions or goals on like January 1st of how the entire year is going to go, and you know, I want to do, and I really am like, you know, that's great. But, you know, and you know, for a lot of people, it probably does happen. You know, maybe a lot of people's lives are pretty stable and nothing happens and nothing changes. But, you know, for a lot of people, it does, you know, and it doesn't mean you're not goal oriented. You know, it probably means you're just thoughtful and patient and objective, you know, that, you know, have a goal for the week, have a goal for the day, you know, and see if you can do that instead of having a goal for the whole year. That sounds really overwhelming, to make a goal for the entire year and how to be successful for the entire year. Because, you know, you're, and again, going back to like, you know, races and signing up for full distance, and you're like, maybe sprints or Olympics are better, you know, or vice versa, you know, or maybe not doing it at all. And you have to be, it's so much easier to change in a week to week than it is to, you know, reallocate and adjust your entire year, you know, because then you feel married to it, right? It's like being with someone you don't want to be with, and you're just stuck and you can't leave because you committed to, you know, a concert series in October, and you both spent the money, you can't get a refund. So you're like, well, I guess I'll just stay, and you're going to be miserable. So just walking away from 350 or whatever it is, right? You know, because everybody says time is money. It's like, think how much time you'll spend working at a thing you don't want to do. I mean, think about it. I mean, and I talk about this I had this conversation with an athlete in early December, and because for like 2 weeks in a row, or really just 2 weeks in a row, but like in addition to like the previous like 4 months, this common theme of losing sleep and being stressed and having anxiety and breaking down in tears, had to do with one thing, the job. And I just finally said, and again, it's easier said than done. It's like, well, it's not that easy to find a new job. I get it, but you're never going to find one if you're not looking for one. And I just say, maybe it's time to find a new job. Like you can't be miserable, right? All the time. You're the job that gives you that much anxiety and brings you to tears. Like, I'm sorry, but there's got to be something else out there, at least to look, right? And to be persistent in trying to better your life instead of just sitting around and being okay that it sucks. Because that's one of my biggest pet peeves in life is how comfortable people have become with, being sedentary and doing nothing, and this is okay. No, it's not. None of it is. But it's ultimately your choice, right? Of what you want to be and how you want to live. Those are your choices every day. And to take more risks and to do things that you're not, like we talked about on the podcast last week, I think, is just take more risks and not worry about failing. We've taken a lot of those, in the last 6 years, that people would think you're nuts, you're crazy, this is dumb, but it all comes back to trying to do your best to be happy. And it looks at a bunch of different ways. So, again, like when you're looking at your year and you haven't signed up for races, you don't have to have one. You don't have to have one. That's not your purpose. As a race is not your purpose. It's something that you have that's kind of a reward, but it's not your purpose. I think I worked with like maybe five or six athletes last year who didn't race once, and they were okay. And you know what else they were? Probably the most consistent athletes that I work with, because and I have a bunch of athletes who race once a year, and they'll just say openly, I hate racing. I hate it. It gives me too much anxiety. I'm too worried about it. You got to take time away from work. I got to find a place for my kids to go, and it just stresses me out. And I'm like, well, just don't race. And they go, well, then, a lot of people are like, well, what's the point? Like, it's called being healthy, being happy, having a purpose, participating in a process, all the things that training does for you if you do it. All these good things, right? We just forget that, and be creative and be imaginative and because again, find what adventure really makes sense for you this year and do it. I mean, we have athletes all the time. I had an email I'm not kidding. Right before we got on the podcast, an athlete that lives in Alaska, and they're like, yeah, I got a new promotion at work. It's a great thing for my family. It's a great thing for me. It's just going to mean a little bit more travel. So, I'd have to work around, in remote parts of Alaska. There's not access to pools and I have to bring my trainer with me. So I was like, I think what makes the most sense for me to still push myself and to still train and to still be, in a process just to, really just do running and strength and focus on some ultra marathons. I'm like, man, if everybody could have this kind of objectivity, they'd be so much happier. And he was like, I'm not giving up on triathlon. It just doesn't make sense for me now. Then let's go with that, man. Let's go with something that you can do and that makes sense versus something that you signed up for, you don't think you can do because it makes sense, but we're doing it anyway. That doesn't drive purpose for you or your coach. Which is something, and I meant to talk about at the beginning of the podcast today, but before we close, that is, our website is C26 Triathlon. We talk a lot about triathlon and endurance sports, but that's what we do. Your adventure is our goal and our pursuit. And whether it's, triathlon or just 5Ks and 10Ks or just marathons or just cycling or just swimming or, swim run events, mountain bike events, gravel stage races, if you want to do it, I got to coach somebody last year for cross country skiing, do 180 kilometers. Like endurance training is 80% the same across the board. That's just 20% is like the specifics of the sport itself. Like that's what we do. We work with endurance athletes, that are, again, like we said, endurance athletes, and people that want to do things and have fun doing it and keep a happy and healthy, perspective when they do it. That's kind of what we do. So again, like if you're a person who's like, I love you guys' podcast, but but you only coach triathletes, or, you only coach really elite level triathletes, or you only coach long distance triathletes. Like, we train people that are athletes to do hard things. That could be anything. It could be anything. And so again, if you need direction or want to be a part of that, we can handle it. You got anything else before I close this out?
No, that's good. I mean, we don't teach lion taming or anything yet.
Yeah, that's not my wheelhouse. I'll defer.
I might give it a shot,
Okay. You know what? Take risks, right? Yeah. Take risks. Why not? Why wait? You be a lion tamer. I can see you out there with some leather on and a whip.
Oh shit, dude.
Because I saw Indiana Jones is coming out with another movie. So I mean, if he can come back at it, you can get back at it.
Yeah, those are all Zoom coaching.
Yes, all Zoom, no live animals. All Zoom.
A green screen behind me of a lot of tigers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. As always,
imagine that, folks.
Yeah, as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you for all the things. Hope you had an amazing holiday season, or excited about the new year, whatever it'll bring. Be prepared. You can go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community, and all things C26. If you have any questions for Mike specifically, especially about lion taming, he is at CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. I will catch up with you later.
See you, dude.
See you.